Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, October 7th, 2016. Time for another Friday show. And we'll try and catch you up and send you off into the weekend, a long weekend for some of you who may have off for, do we still even call it Columbus Day? Is that even PC? Should we all vote for Donald Trump to get rid of that? And I don't know. Or maybe I guess being PC would be to get rid of it. I guess he would preserve that. I don't know. Does he even care about Columbus? I have no idea. Being from New York, I don't know. Columbus Day, I guess, is still a thing. It's on the calendar here in Virginia, although I don't know for sure that the schools are closed for our kids. I don't know that it's because of Columbus Day. I don't think we've ever had Columbus Day traditionally, but I don't know. They usually make it like a teacher work day or something. I don't know what the school system is calling it, but I'm calling it the kids are going to be home and running around in the background and maybe making some noise during any Monday show. We'll plan accordingly. I have to plan for a Wednesday show as it is, and I think we've got enough material that I should probably spend some time over the long weekend recording another bonus show, even if I can't do one live, because Yom Kippur, and I'll be hungry, and I really won't want to talk to anybody. That's basically the way it comes down on Wednesday. Apt subject, of course, because I guess Josh Marshall of Talking Points Memo has been spending the morning fretting about anti-Semitism and the rise of a new wave of it under the Donald Trump candidacy, and we all know all about that and why it's happening. But we might want to catch up with his thoughts on it or add our own to it. And in the meantime, well, let's see. So many other things going on. I don't even know where to start, except to say that I can start, as always, it's always possible to start with, and I often forget to start with, Bill's morning tweet from the wilds of Portland, Maine, where it's not all that wild, unless you're hanging out with Bill. Then it's pretty wild. Daily Co's Radio is live now. This is true. Host Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, is giving away free, get cut out of your cardigan sweater coupons. Okay. Sure, why not? That'd be a good thing to have on hand. It comes in handy around Thanksgiving time, too, if you need to escape. And, I don't know. I don't see any reason why you should have to pay to get cut out of your cardigan. So, I figured it was a good thing to do. Well, let's see. Here's something that I will have to discuss at some point during the show, whether it's today or over the weekend when I tape a show for you for either or both Monday and or Wednesday. But I saw Justice retweeting this one in between giving me the thumbs up on all the equipment working properly, although I better check in and make sure that that's actually what it says. Yep, everything's good. But I saw him retweet an article, a post from Daily Coast we'll have to look at. We all knew about the trafficking, the untold story of Trump model management, part 1. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. By the way, Bill says, my mistake. Trump was cut out of a cashmere sweater, not a cardigan. Sorry, no coupons. Well, he doesn't need the coupon anyway. All right, at least we're up to date with that. Though I am behind on that story as it happens. Greg Dworkin, what can you tell us about sweaters?
Trump didn't want to get his hair mussed, so he had his staff cut him out of the sweater rather than pull it over his head.
Really?
This is a true story.
When did that happen?
Does it matter?
No, except whenever I say, when did it happen, then people need to say last night, but
tomorrow.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, tomorrow it'll happen. So cut out, and a cashmere sweater at that, because he's so rich, it doesn't matter.
Really matter, but it was probably not his sweater.
That's probably true. It was Stewie Rah-Rah's cashmere sweater. How did he get the sweater on? I guess he put it on and then fixed his hair.
They knitted it around him.
The sheep actually
they put him on it when he was 3 years old and he kind of grew into it,
That could be. So cut out of a cashmere sweater because he didn't want to mess his hair up.
Anyway, that's the story. Is it true? Is it not true?
It is true. It does not matter.
It's truthy. It sounds like it could be true. So good enough. I mean, his staff says.
His staff says it is true, or it didn't happen.
His staff says it's true.
All right.
It must be, because I heard it on the internet today.
I
Actually, read the
don't
story
know why
and
the
see
staff
no,
would say
but it's
it
a great
was.
story, so it must be true.
Okay.
Speaking of great stories that must be true, I think the Rasmussen poll all of a sudden has Clinton up by 2. I think it's a terribly lousy poll, but it fits my narrative, so I'm telling you about it.
Oh, okay. Well, narrative.
That's how those things work.
Uber alles, as a matter of fact. Okay.
Hey, listen, I got some great polling for you. There was a big bunch of state polling roundup yesterday. Listen to some of these. Michigan, from the Detroit Free Press, Clinton 43, Trump 32. Arizona, we talked about, I think, from Emerson, Clinton 44, Trump 42. It's an only poll. It's probably not right, but for Arizona to be competitive at this particular point in time, I mention it because Trump did a rally in Arizona, and I guess we know now why. Florida, and we'll get a lot to Florida. It looks like Florida has survived. It looks like Florida will not be blown out to sea. Certainly the southern part of Florida dodged a bullet, because it looks like the storm stayed just enough offshore so that the eye-wall winds didn't hit the coast. And Cape Canaveral was spared. However, Daytona Beach and others are going to be at risk for the rest of the day by noon. So the news tells us. The storm is going to be right off of Daytona Beach, may even start to hit in terms of the eye wall. And the storm surge is going to be fairly big. Other places haven't gotten hit as bad as we feared, so that's all good news. And half of Florida is past the storm, at least this first pass of it.
All right.
And then it goes up, and it may actually make landfall in Savannah, Georgia, rather than Florida, which would be unexpected. And,
we're going to set off all the guns.
Yeah, but by then weakening. So, fingers crossed, and hopefully it stays out to sea altogether and then just turns around and goes back where it came from.
Low energy.
Not Haiti. We don't want it to hit Haiti again.
Right, no. But yeah, wasn't there some talk that this thing was going to maybe make a loop?
It's making a loop. But how big a loop and what kind of storm it is and how weakened it is, we don't know yet. That's going to be middle of next week, actually. So anyway,
right.
Florida, Trump 45, Clinton 44 from Emerson. Again, this is landline-only polling. Nevada, that is Nevada, not Nevada, Donald Trump. Clinton 43, Trump 43, landline only. You got to feel good. You got to add 2 or 3 points to each of these Emerson polls. University of North Florida, we talked about Clinton 41, Trump 38.
Yes.
New Hampshire from Suffolk, Clinton 44, Trump 42. I wonder when Suffolk will stop polling, because they do that. Remember, that's David Paleologos who decided not to poll Florida anymore because obviously Romney had won. He did that in 2012.
Oh.
So I take Suffolk polls with a grain of salt. Indiana, Trump 43, Clinton 38, only 5 points from Public Opinion Strategies. And Arizona, Clinton 42, Trump 42 from Predictive Insights. And the big Ohio poll last night, Clinton 44, Trump 43 from PPP. So the idea that they've given up on Ohio and it's gone, no. Actually, it's pretty competitive. And this morning, I see that YouGov, and I did send that to you, it's in the Skype link there, YouGov election model today, excuse me, has Hillary Clinton 338 electoral college votes, Donald Trump 200, that's a gain of 4 for her, drop of 4 for Trump, and the popular vote, they have 47.9 for Clinton, and Donald Trump 43.8, so that's basically 48-44. Gary Johnson's down to 4.8, and Jill Stein 2.2, and that's probably what's going to continue over time. The third parties and fourth parties are going to feed.
Well, he's certainly doing himself no favors. Every time he opens his mouth, he's so unimpressive.
Yeah, he's doing it by himself, so that's all good.
Yeah.
One thing the Public Policy notes when they did their polling, this is a tweet from them, one undercovered reason Hillary has struggled, sheer sexism.
Oh.
40% of Trump voters in Ohio say the country is inherently better with a male president.
Well, it always has been.
Yeah, and that's the way we've always done it, so why are we trying to change this now? So it's true, it's underlying, they don't want to talk about it, just like they don't like talking about racism. It kind of spoils their narrative a little bit.
Yeah, they hate that.
They do, so I'm just saying.
All right.
I'm just saying. Anyway,
you're allowed to say.
Let's see, finishing up with polling here, even the LA Times, they have Trump 46 and Clinton 44. That's 2 points. Down from 5 just the other day. And I gave you the picture, the pretty picture there. Who do you think is going to win keeps growing every day in Clinton's favor. It had narrowed at the end of September to only 50% thought Clinton would win and 45 thought Trump. Now it's 53 and 42. So it's growing. And the who will win, as you know, is one of my favorite questions. So that's the polling wrap-up for today. Of course, we'll have more. There's always more. But it'll be interesting to see. Something that happened today, of course, it's the first Friday of the month, so we got some job numbers.
It is, that's right, wow.
It's a pretty average kind of job report, but I have to point out the unemployment rate is 5.0.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well,
so let me read to you the September unemployment rate going back to 1980.
Back to 1980. You're going backwards, or are you starting in 80?
The unemployment rate in 1980 was 7.5.
Okay.
1984, 7.3. 1988, 5.4. 1992, 7.6. 1996, 5.2. 2000, 3.9. That was Bill Clinton, if anybody needs a reminder.
When was that?
2000.
Okay.
September 2000. 2004, 5.4. 2008, 6.1. 2012, 7.8. 2016, 5.0.
Okay.
And it has stayed at 4.9 to 5.0 in 10 out of the last 11 months. The only other month was, I think, a 4.7. So these are pretty decent numbers. It turns out people are starting to get back into the job force at greater numbers, and yet the numbers really aren't changing that much. And we have a steady, 156,000 a month growth rate, so it's between 150 to 2,000 every month, 200,000 every month. It turns out also that there's something like 11 million jobs that have been created under Obama. And interestingly, 2 million of those are in healthcare.
That is interesting.
So I was talking to my healthcare peeps, and that's what they tell me this morning. We do have some interesting articles to talk about as well. I think that one of the important ones to talk about is that Josh Marshall tweet storm that you were talking about. It's 17 strong, and I have it here. Josh Marshall on being an American Jew in the age of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Jews are one of the most consistently Democratic voting groups in the country, going back many decades. So it's not like they needed a lot of riveting, but I think, and polls show, that one of the less discussed aspects of 2016 is how this site has deeply intensified Jews' collective attachment to the Democratic Party, both in voting and in political giving. I can see why this is showing up both in polling and anecdotally based on my own experience. Josh says, I'm 47. I've lived most in California and the Northeast, though I was born in Missouri. I knew a lot about anti-Semitism. Of course, I've seen instances of it, but in almost half a century of life, it's pretty hard for me to think of many or even any examples where I've witnessed or been the target of the menace of anti-Semitism directly. Over the last year, it's become so frequent as almost to become a new normal. And not awkward comments or subtle discomfort, but neo-Nazis. I write about biking and transportation and have been on the receiving ends of anti-Semitic tweets. Never happened before.
Oh, yes, that was...
And jokes about ovens, kite, Juden, the rawest kinds of avowed hostility and menace. We call it frog Twitter.
Yeah.
So one of the things Jews carry with them is instinctively is the knowledge that when one group gets targeted, even when they have no particular connection to, it'll almost certainly eventually come around to them too. Jews are a tiny minority, so when race purity and tribalism becomes the order of the day, it's going to be very hard for them not to end up as outsiders. It's not GOP elites or the great mass of Republicans who are driving this change, but they are standing by and standing with the man in the movement that is. I doubt very much that there are many Jews who don't feel the change in from 2015 and 2016 or know where it's coming from. I doubt Paul Ryan has an anti-Semitic bone in his body. That's true. Ryan's problems are his economics. But he's going to campaign today with Donald Trump. That's all I need to know. I should make clear, he says, that I know blacks and Hispanic Americans, not to mention Muslims, have been treated to as much and in many cases far more hostility and racism this year. But that only makes the point. When purity and tribalism become the order of the day in a country that's still largely white and Christian, we won't be part of the club.
Yeah. Not likely. It was a very interesting sort of, well, tweet storm certainly is what it was. When he does that all the time too. It's hard to follow his sometimes because people interject all along the route.
Right. That's why it's horrifying. So you just get to see his.
Yeah.
The questions are interesting. It's a conversation, but
Sometimes.
You get to read them as is.
There was one thread running through it of one guy who was like, Jews are only 1.4% of the population. Why should we care about, why do we give them so much attention when there's anti-Semitism? Sort of under the guise of, there are other minorities against whom there's all sorts of discrimination and targeting. Why aren't we focusing on those? But it pretty quickly broke down to, why are the Jews getting special treatment? Although I did see an interesting comeback to it, which was, why is there so much attention paid to the canary in the coal mine? Surely we should be paying attention to the miners. Yeah, but the canary's there for a reason.
Right, exactly.
I thought that was interesting.
So here's a follow-up on that, which is a slightly different angle on it.
Okay.
Not Jews in particular, but the problem in general. It's Chris Arnott, who, as you know, has been going around the country talking to Trump voters and trying to get a sense of how they feel. We've read a lot of his tweet storms in the air, and he's still doing it. And this time he's in Lewiston, Maine. Did you hear that, Bill?
Lewiston.
Yeah, Lewiston's a nice town.
Well, yeah. What do they have there? Is that Bowdoin there?
It's one of the college towns.
Yeah, okay. Boy, they drink a lot. Holy cow.
I think Bowdoin's could be.
I'll check.
Could be.
You go on with the story. I'll take care of the stupid details that are distracting.
And Bowdoin, and I always forget which one's
where. Oh, right. Yeah, that's all. It's likely to be one of them anyway.
But I think it might be. Anyway, Chris Arnott on Lewiston, Maine, and Somali immigrants. You look up those three colleges while I read this. Photograph, and he writes for The Guardian. But he's also a former trader in bonds and a former math major. So he has a lot of different perspectives to bring to this. And he's sitting at one of two old man tables in the McDonald's. There's the Hillary table and the Trump table. They don't sit together. Kind of interesting there. Quick and perhaps incoherent thoughts on Lewiston, Maine, Somali immigration, and what it says about globalization and class. Drank with older vet last night who, to be charitable, didn't like Somali immigrants. He's 61 and on disability, various injuries. He's angry because any changes or cuts in his benefits he assigns to arrival of Somalis, any changes in his poor neighborhood, the same. His low-income building has changed. His daily food line gotten longer. It's for him seen as competition for limited resources. The park he and other disabled vets hang out in now has Somali men hanging in it. It's visceral. Life, in his view, has been rough on him already. I hate his ugly racism, Chris says, but his experience of resettled refugees is very different than somebody in, say, Brooklyn Heights. Social changes and economic changes always falls hardest and has most impact on the poor, which has been the subject of Chris's writing. It's not to justify, it's not to excuse it, it's to try and explain it. Plays out in visceral ways, he says, and the wealthy implement policy changes without considering the impact on the poor, sometimes even with intent to harm them, he says. So, he's worked on Wall Street. Again, that background, he can understand that. So the point is that when you have particular groups that are targeted, it winds up affecting other groups as well. If you look at Maine, if you look at Paul LePage and Paul LePage's mouth and some of the things he said about Somali immigrants, and you're Jewish, how does that not hit you in the gut? Because all you have to do is change the name, and there you are.
Yeah. And it's pretty simple to understand. Wow. Well, it's amazing what's happening around, and a lot of people reacting to this and to Josh's thing, and people noting, or as Justice just did, I'm not even Jewish, and I've been on the receiving end of more weird crap from Nazi goons than ever before, and it really did come out of nowhere, it seemed like.
Not just Twitter, but, it didn't come out of nowhere, and it's always been there.
By the way, Bates College in Lewiston, Bowdoin is in Brunswick, Maine. Just thought I'd update that. By the way, not the only college in Lewiston. I think Bates maybe gets all the attention, but University of Southern Maine has a campus there, Central Maine Community College, Kaplan University. Please.
Yeah, it's in a college town. So, it's of most interest, and there are places where Williams College comes to mind too in Western Massachusetts.
Yes. Where
there is a real town-gown conflict.
Yeah.
Sometimes mild, sometimes not so mild, but it's there.
Yeah. Oh, pardon me. Okay. All right. I'm watching more reaction to the anti-Semitism thread. It's pretty interesting too, and
it's one of the most interesting topics, and that's why I thought we should.
You should watch it too, and watch that thread, Josh's thread, as anti-Semites worm their way into it as logicians.
Yeah, just to prove the point, right?
Yeah.
I saw somebody tweeting something very similar, and this was a remark about sexism. And it goes along the lines of, we really have to appreciate the fact that there's sexism in play here, and then somebody tweets, well, Clinton is no more qualified by being a woman than Obama was because he has dark skin.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, okay. I guess you're kind of trying to prove the point, except you're proving my point. Why are you even bringing that in? Clearly, these things matter to people in a way that is not always expressed by economic anxiety.
Yes. You can often tell a lot about a person by the step in the conversation that they either impute to you or they skip over in jumping in and arguing with you, right? The immediate, Clinton's no more qualified just because she's a woman. Well, I know. That's why I never talk about that.
Record.
Yeah. Well, I get that all the time in the gun thing. Or, yesterday's thing was we had a bad weekend with gun show accidents last weekend, and I pointed it out. And I inevitably somebody sent me two stories of people who had been hit by cars at car shows, which was an interesting thing. I'm glad I found out that was the case because I didn't think you drove around inside a car show.
Right.
You're not supposed to. But things happen, accidents happen. But he was, of course, tweeting me to tell me, well, more people got hit by cars at car shows this year than were shot by guns at gun shows. And I thought, wow, that could be amazing. What an amazing unreported story. But it turned out, like most other things, it's not true. But then the answer, I showed him, here's 50 people who got shot at gun shows. Show me the car stories. And his answer was, well, which one do you want to ban first, Mr. Gun Grabber? Well, I didn't really actually say that, but, you have your own conversation over there. Just do my part, too. Same thing here, there's all this anti-Semitism happening. Oh, yeah? Well, you're only 1.4% of the population. Why should we care? Okay, we shouldn't care about anti-anything-ism? I mean, I don't know where we're going with this.
Right.
Watch out for those guys, even if they don't have frogs in their avatars.
Or when I was growing up, it would have been more along the lines of, how can you say that? That's not true. I don't know any. We don't allow them where I live.
Yeah, well, that's a possibility, too. Widely shared video clips yesterday. I should have brought this one up. Did I even set this one aside? One of the many roving journalists wandering the country talking to Trump supporters who ran into a clique of Holocaust deniers.
Yeah, but they were not together.
Right.
One that was the whole thing. I'm not with that guy. I just happen to be separately on my own a Holocaust denier.
Did you pack your anti-Semitic luggage yourself? Yes. Okay. Just wondering.
In fact, I'm getting into an argument with him about something. Please understand, we're not together. We just happen to both be neo-Nazis.
Oh, I thought you meant romantically. No. All right. Okay. Well, in that case, yeah. Ideologically, yes, but we did not arrive in the same vehicle. So, this guy, it was interesting. I only saw one part of many clips yesterday, and I was briefly wondering to myself, how does a guy who, I don't know how old the guy is, but he's couldn't be older than 30, young 30s, I would guess. Probably younger than that.
Well, let's just say he was younger than us.
Yeah, going on about, I don't believe that the Holocaust happened, or at least not as reported. And I pondered sometimes, where do people come up with that idea? I mean, I know where you can get it planted, but the guy seems so earnest. I don't believe that, that we heard the right numbers about the Holocaust. I think he was willing to say that.
This is right. When you hear that, you look at his tattoos and you're looking for 88 or 14 or 1488.
Yeah, and I don't know if he had any tattoos that said it, but his sign actually did. But it wasn't in the clip that I saw. I was just curious about why somebody would come to the conclusion that, well, maybe it happened, but the numbers were wrong. And then I saw the rest of the clips in which it was revealed that he's standing there with a sign that has 1488 on it, which he casually explains, oh, well, yeah, that's Heil Hitler, and blah, blah, blah.
88 is Heil Hitler, eighth letter of the alphabet, and 14 are the 14 words that indicate that whites are superior.
Yes, and so I, then it was like, oh, well, that's boring. I was wondering, how did he come to the conclusion that the Holocaust had been misreported? Oh, the answer is as simple as it could possibly be. He's an actual Nazi, So, I mean, do you ask the Nazis, how'd that Holocaust go? What Holocaust? I don't know what you're talking about.
Were you the one that was tweeting the contradiction between the concepts here? It didn't happen, but it was awesome.
Oh, no, although I did see somebody point that one out there, although they were saying it's not that he doesn't believe that the Holocaust didn't happen, it's that he would like to reboot it.
Yeah, there he goes.
So, no, but I haven't seen that one, but well, it is a weird inherent contradiction. It didn't happen, but I sure wish it did, and if it did, it would have been awesome, and I'd like to do one now.
Well, that's even more, sensible than the it didn't happen and it was awesome. So
well, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that's a problematic.
Right. It didn't happen, and you need to go to the gas chambers.
Right, which don't exist.
Which didn't exist.
I think at some point the guy says they didn't intentionally gas 6 million Jews. Like it was some kind of accident, or they were cleaning the gas chamber and it went off, or something. I don't know. I don't know what intention. Yeah, that one I've never seen introduced before. But he was a super earnest guy.
Well, we don't need to go down that road. It's just that people like that do exist, and in fact, there's plenty of pictures also. The more simple Donald Trump banner or a bumper sticker being sold next to the Nazi flag.
Yeah.
You can find that all over Trump rallies.
Easy to find.
Anyway, Max Boot has an interesting piece here.
Max Boot sounds like
conservative who's an ever-Trumper about Republicans paying the price. But in a slightly different way. I'm going to give you two angles on it. One is what happens to the Trumpistas after he loses. The other is Max Boot about media. He talks about right-wing media, and he says you can and should blame Trump for believing so much of the nonsense that's spouted by the alternative media, but the deeper problem is with the outlets themselves. The right wing has created its own echo chamber. We remember that with the unskewed poll stuff from Romney, which is increasingly disconnected from reality. And we know that because Trump gets all his information from Alex Jones, who was really peeved that WikiLeaks didn't bring down Clinton. Remember, today's Friday, and she was supposed to be destroyed by Wednesday.
She did not say which Wednesday.
There are millions of Americans who share Trump's ultra beliefs, which helps to explain why his presidential campaign has done better than expected. But in the long term, the right's addiction to its own news has become destructive. It promotes the election of Tea Party absolutists to Congress, the nomination of presidential candidates who have trouble appealing to swing votes. Perhaps it's just a coincidence, but in the 28 years since Limbaugh was syndicated, Republican presidential candidates have won a popular majority once, 2004. In the 28 years before then, Republicans lost the popular vote 5 times. Whether Trump wins or loses, conservatives need to reevaluate their infatuation with alternative news sources that tell them what they want to hear and join a more mainstream conversation that includes different points of view. Isn't that
the marketplace of ideas. They used to love that marketplace.
I'm going to couple that with a commentary piece by Noah Rothman, who looks at a fanfic alt future here. Reconciliation and renewal after Trump.
Not congressional reconciliation.
No. This project is necessary because so many on both sides of the lingering divide over Trump within the GOP do not particularly want to reconcile. And I got a pretty good piece from Paul Waldman on that. Currently, Donald Trump is underperforming Mitt Romney among white voters, while Hillary Clinton is having a bear of a time, that's a Russian bear, reassembling Barack Obama's winning coalition. Republicans are unlikely to see gains among minorities, women, and young voters. In fact, they're losing Asian voters, a new poll says. Trump will have run the campaign that Republicans warned against in the off-the-line 2012 autopsy and proven every one of its recommendations correct. His law should finally put to rest the idea that the GOP can win the White House on the shoulders of missing white voters. Conservatives are fortunate they'll be well positioned to pick up the pieces of the Republican Party after November. Despite endorsing Trump, House Speaker Paul Ryan has managed to preserve the integrity of his governing agenda, which is largely at odds with Trumpism. Actually, it's a disaster, but a completely different kind. Moreover, both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have repeatedly insisted Trump represents an aberration from conventional conservative and Republican thought. They did that. They decoupled it from the Congress race, varying thoughts on whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, but no question it helps them beat Trump. Complicating the Democratic Party's mission of branding the GOP with the celebrity candidates' discredited ideas in future cycles. I happen to think it'll be relatively easy because a lot of them endorse Trump. So that's the whole point. What he's saying here, that there has to be a reckoning. Okay, reunification and a recapitulation of something resembling a national governing coalition must be the foremost priority. Unity of purpose will be necessary to serve as a bulwark against Clinton. and her efforts to chisel Obama's achievement into America's foundation. Don't forget this is a conservative knitting magazine. The pressures on Republicans will be immense. Democrats will do their best to exacerbate the fissures within the coalition. Go Democrats. And the talker class will surely return to the profitable work of naming alleged quislings within the GOP.
Yes, I don't know if Democrats will do their best at it.
Well,
they will
they'll do their best, but they won't be very good at it.
That could be. Well,
it will be on those who kept Trump at arm's length to put this conflict to bed as magnanimously as possible. So basically what he's saying is there needs to be admitting that you did wrong. You have to get rid of the Trumpists in order for the Republican Party to move forward. And, of course, other observers are looking at this and saying, but the Trump faction is the biggest faction in the party. They are more likely to get rid of you than you are to get rid of them.
Yes, that is a problem. Well, majority rules and all that. That's tough. That's a tough obstacle, to be sure. I don't know, though. One of the Republicans' favorite things is avoiding the admission of wrongdoing.
Yeah.
So
listen, it's always going to be helped by the fact that there's a lot of people out there who just do a really bad job of analysis, who don't really understand what's going on, or even worse, they do, and they just do the wrong thing anyway.
Yeah. Well,
I'm reminded of the late, great Ed Show.
Oh.
Poor Ed now working for Russia Today, for example.
Is he?
Yeah, just like Larry King is. And here's a piece from my friend Susan Demis from Michigan on one Michael Moore, who, like Scott Adams, just loves Donald Trump.
The Michigan one, not the Maine one. Okay.
Right? He doesn't love him in the sense that he wants him to win. He loves him in the sense of like Scott Adams. He just thinks that he's just awesome and is going to win, despite the fact that Moore doesn't like him.
Huh.
And it's he's had some columns about that.
All right.
Right? This is from Michael Moore. From Green Bay to Pittsburgh, this, my friends, is the middle of England. Broken, depressed, struggling, the smokestacks strewn across the countryside with the carcass of what we used to call the middle class. Remember, we just went through the jobs numbers. Angry, embittered, working, and non-working people who were lied to by the trickle-down of Reagan and abandoned by Democrats. It's like a Susan Sarandon view of the world. We have to destroy it to make it better. Who still try to talk a good line, but are really just looking forward to rub one out with a lobbyist from Goldman Sachs who will write them nice big checks before leaving the room.
Yeah.
Okay? He's got pro-Trump declarations. He's often quoted by Breitbart News. And Susan Demis is, that's the point, right? One of the surefire ways of nabbing media attention is for liberals to break with Democrats and conservatives to bash the GOP. And Moore does it with his trademark bombast, unloading cringeworthy zingers made for TV. We saw this with the Flint water crisis. Moore has been a loud and frequent critic of Obama, even irresponsibly suggesting in April that the city would riot. It didn't. And he should arrest Governor Rick Steiner and Attorney General Bill Schwed. He can't. Moore actually wrote in a column, "Don't send bottled water to Flint," and told people to revolt. Right? When you need water, you know what you do? You send bottled water. When you're dealing with the unspeakable human tragedy of children being poisoned by the water supply, Moore's clown act suddenly isn't funny anymore. It's wrong-handed and deeply irresponsible. It's a stark reminder that those of us in Michigan deserve better. And you know what? Those of us in the country deserve better.
True.
And the Donald Trump clown show isn't funny anymore. And after he loses, there really does need to be some kind of reckoning. Maybe it's not the kind Rothman said, but, go back to the whole segment we're talking about here. There are a large number of people in this country.
True.
That's true. We'll just end it right there, and he'll be absolutely right, and even Armando can't disagree with me. But there's a large number of people in this country who are perfectly willing to look the other way when the anti-Semitic and anti-people of color campaign of Donald Trump ran, and people like Paul Ryan said, okay, well, I'm all right with it, so long as he wins.
Well, I'm not one of them, but I will benefit from it greatly. So,
or, to Hugh Hewitt. Yeah, I get it. It's terrible, but, Supreme Court, so whatever.
Yeah. So much more important that the Supreme Court be conservative to that, because what? Because the conservative Supreme Court would step in and say, okay, Mr. Trump, your policies are okay, but your anti-Semitism is not.
Well, but, they would preserve the voting rights a blockage that Republicans want to do all over the country to keep people of color from voting and therefore keep their power. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Or something. I mean, otherwise it's never been really explained. And since you can't say that publicly, I assume that's what it is.
I guess so. Well, there was an awful lot in the last 5 minutes or so, the things that reminded me of other stories that have...
That's my job.
Yeah.
So at the end of my segment, I can get off and you can talk about all that other stuff that you want to talk about.
You might want to comment on some of them. Let's see. One, you mentioned sort of the Republican bubble where they get their own information.
Yep, the Max Boot story.
Yes, right. So I just observing from the last 24 hours the emergence of weather truthing as led by Matt Drudge and apparently Rush Limbaugh as well, both more or less convinced that Hurricane Matthew was some sort of government creation to clear out Florida for some unknown reason, and it really wasn't
Screw up
all that
voting,
strong.
but at the same time pushed a line about climate change being important.
Yeah, so I guess there was that, right. Climate change is important because, and it's real because this terrible storm was amplified by global warming, and so therefore something. And so somehow the point was going to be proven by staying where you were and refusing to evacuate just to show that global warming isn't true, which was awfully weird. Just, I mean, there have been Category 4 storms.
We've seen this before, right? When the pandemic came and people were saying, oh, you're exaggerating and you're overhyping it. And listen, if you take preparations and nothing happens, whether it's Y2K or whether it's something else, and things don't happen, that's a good thing. That's what you're supposed to do. And instead of saying, you see, nothing happened.
Right.
It's like the dumbest thing in the world. But then again, look who's saying it.
Yeah, well, so I thought that was rather interesting. Just the fact that it happened was pretty amazing. I guess I didn't really oppose it terribly just because I thought, well, the people most likely to listen to those two guys and not evacuate, I guess I'm okay with them staying if it's a disaster.
I think everybody who thinks that way should go now.
Yeah, stay there.
Go to Daytona Beach and stay on the beach.
I thought I could convince them
could go wrong?
That the storm being the wrath of God.
No, I am not telling people to go and get killed.
No, I thought I just wanted them to. I figured they might think that, like the Bible, the storm would pass over you if you could identify yourself as a true believer, and that the best way of doing that, since you were going to be voting for Donald Trump, would be to take the voter the photo ID that you need to vote, put it on the roof of your house before the storm, so that God can see it and He will spare your house. Don't put any tape over anything that might obscure his view of it. Just leave it there to prove that you're a true blue American and then wait the storm out that way. But make sure you use all your photo IDs.
Attach a big parachute to your front door.
Yes.
See what happens. I mean, what could go wrong?
The rapture is real, but this hurricane is not. I got it. And, yeah, that was in the news in the last couple of days. Also, you mentioned you were looking at some polling demographics and mentioned that Asian American voters very heavily, or overwhelmingly, like 41-point lead. I think you mentioned that poll the other day.
Yeah.
For
they even broke down the different
Clinton.
Asian groups, Koreans versus Japanese versus Cambodians,
That's good.
et cetera, et cetera.
Because Jesse Waters didn't. That was also in the news. Jesse Waters doing another special segment for Bill O'Reilly, went to Chinatown and basically went around, he might as well just have
He could have done Charlie Chan imitations.
Yeah, right. He asked every person he could find on the street.
For those of you not old enough to remember Charlie Chan, go look it up.
Yeah. So he would stop people on the street and say, who are you voting for? And they'd say Hillary Clinton, and he'd say, do you know Kung Fu? And what do they do with those laundries? I don't know. He's kind of came up with the most absurd I could play it for you, but you'd all vomit.
Yeah.
But
and despite criticism,
he's just kidding
put
everybody.
it on the air anyway.
Yeah.
And then he described himself as a visual humorist.
Yes, he's
who always does these humorous
He's chiefly a humorist. I know that Amanda Turkle thought he was hilarious when he followed her for humorous purposes on her vacation to try to conduct an ambush interview. He's the ambush interview guy. He's not a political humorist, but today he decided
ambush interviews are funny.
They are hilarious.
They're just absolutely hilarious. Right? So along those lines, how's it working? Well, there's this new Latino. Remember I told you the other day that right now Trump was getting about 10 or 11% of the Latino vote. So Latino Decision actually published Latino voters poised to cast the most lopsided presidential vote on record. and predicts 82% Clinton, 15% Trump, 3% other.
Okay.
That's just never happened. Remember, we're talking about 30, 35%, 40% for Bush.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable.
All right. It is rather remarkable. And I guess the last thing which I could discuss later on, perhaps. So you mentioned Paul Ryan, along for the ride and ready to, poised to spring his agenda on us should Donald Trump win.
You and Joan should talk about it next Wednesday, too. This is just remarkable. The guy's really, bad.
Yeah.
But Trump is so bad, we don't have time to talk about him.
Right. That's exactly it. So, yeah, he's put together, of course, a whole agenda and lots of attention in the trade papers here in D.C. over the last couple of days about his announced intention to use, and we used the word earlier, reconciliation, that filibuster-proof legislative vehicle in the Senate to push through all sorts of things. And they've been warming up the Senate parliamentarian, making sure that they can get favorable rulings of all sorts. And apparently this parliamentarian wide open to including all sorts of policy measures, which are really not supposed to be, strictly speaking, in a reconciliation bill. But they're okay with it, and they'll fire the parliamentarian if they're not. So simple enough. Major threat there, all hinging, of course, on having a president who would sign this thing. Donald Trump very well probably would, because he has no idea, and Pence would say yes, so he would. Hillary Clinton would not. So there's your choice. Supreme Court, no. If that doesn't do it for you, racism, if that doesn't do it for you, how about every program of the United States government that weirdo Republicans have ever threatened to terminate but have been impotent to the task to this point suddenly becomes a reality.
If you're wondering whether Trump is softening any, there's a report this morning I'm looking at that in Trump Tower, Trump meets with the National Border Patrol Council, whoever they are, and says people are coming over the border just to vote, and he calls it a disgrace.
That is a disgrace.
Okay, and Philip Bump points out, if they're coming over to the border to vote in Texas and Arizona, apparently they're voting Republican, so what's your problem?
Yeah, I don't know. No difficulty. Well, they're going to color the way these elections go. Yeah, so very interesting. Another one of his ridiculous lies, and also another area ripe for exploration, the riling up of folks in anticipation of all sorts of voter fraud, calling for people to monitor problematic, he might say, voter precincts that would be translated into minority voter precincts in urban areas. And, it'll be real interesting when people show up. Philadelphia in particular, Pennsylvania actually in particular, has got a real issue on its hands. They've got some very weird polling place laws that are really not up to the task should, let's say, armed protesters show up and insist on making themselves amateur, unappointed monitors of the election area. My chief concern really is in places where people are going to have to stand on line for hours, or if you're from other parts of the country, stand in line, more properly, for hours outside in areas where these monitors can legally remain. And imagine what if the real wacko neo-Nazis plus their guns, which is possible in some states, show up at these places, and if the line wraps around, out the building and around it in a certain way, there are places where it would be perfectly legal for these people to stand there armed and simply spew racial hatred directly at people who are going to have to stand there for hours and listen to it because they have to wait to vote. And should they raise their voices in objection, the guy's got an AR-15 on him. What do we do about that? And Pennsylvania particularly weird, of course, because if you call the police to come to the precinct, they've got a weird sensitivity, but it's actually, you can overcome it pretty easily, but it's apparently actually against the law for the police to enter a polling place on Election Day unless, and I'm sure it would be easy to get this, 3 separate voters or the election officials on hand ask them to come to quell a disturbance. So it's just a weird, frothy mix. And
Right,
Pennsylvania
but it's outside
hates frothy
the polling
mixes.
place, not in the polling place. It's likely the problem.
Yeah, it's a lot of times people will be standing outside, and of course, the people who are coming in as monitors are chiefly suburban, rural, ex-urban, and they're going to not really recognize what's going on in some of these urban districts. Not just, of course, they'll be looking out for, oh my God, everyone here is a minority. You're all illegals. And but
Yeah,
even
but it's
things
going
like
to be fun watching the 85-year-old lady poll workers take these guys down and beat the crap out of them.
yeah, right. You with the AR-15. You mash her. She's going to hit them with their purse. But I'm certain that one of the early incidents, will be a very common practice in some of the urban areas where people live close together, but don't have great access to easy transportation to the polls. Very often you'll meet at your church and you'll run a bus from the parking lot to the polling place and take everybody there to vote. Or if people are
Right.
from retirement
Souls to
homes,
the polls.
do
That's
the
how it
same.
works.
Yeah, and you'll stop the bus and unload them. And it's happened before where conservative poll watchers are certain. Oh, this they're bussing in homeless people and illegals to pack the polls. No, they're local residents. And they've come to the polls together as a community activity, the way it used to be, but they will view that as some sort of cheating, or God forbid they find out, oh my God, someone's carrying one of those sample ballots, as we saw. Actually, we saw that happen. Yeah, we saw that happen during the primaries, where, as it happens, Bernie Sanders supporters who were, I guess, new to politics saw people carrying sample ballots that had been marked by the local mainline Democratic club, which was in favor of Hillary Clinton, and people thought that was some sort of voter fraud. I am sure that the deplorables won't be any smarter about it than they were, although they may know very well exactly what those ballots are, but simply insist that they're voter fraud anyway. And I just imagine people having them torn out of their hands on their way through the doors, and
It could be
fights
ugly.
ensuing.
Let's hope it's not.
Yeah.
Hey, I got one from my buddy and friend and most valued analyst, Mark Halpern.
Okay.
Here's a tweet from this morning, it looks like.
From on board the Trump helicopter.
Because the pundits are really annoyed that the rest of us are not following their lead and saying Mike Pence won the debate so badly that now Clinton has to withdraw from the race.
So bad. Yes.
So Mark Halpern tweets, Republican in debate deflects question and pivots. Media, evasive dodge. Democrat in debate deflects question and pivots. Media, brilliant maneuver. He tweeted this.
Yeah. Happens all the time, Mark.
It happens all the time, right? So it's his criticism that for some reason Democrats, the media's in the tank for Democrats, which is kind of laughable. I think that Trump has earned all the bad media himself. But it still goes, to the point of people like him not fully understanding what it is that debates are supposed to do. And in the end, debates are supposed to move votes. And that is the only criteria for winning and losing. There's a poll, for example, from Politico, of all places, this morning.
Politico.
Right, yeah. And guess what? It's trying to gauge out and game the 2020 election.
Well,
and this poll purports to show that Pence leads the 2020 field because he had such a strong debate.
Sure.
Right? However, 84% of people in the poll said the 90-minute tit-for-tat would not change their vote. That's mentioned as an afterthought when, in fact, that's the finding in the poll. The key one. The one that should be highlighted. Right?
Yeah.
Vice presidential debate doesn't change minds is the headline. Not that Trump is leading by a minor percentage point.
That's, well, okay. That's kind of strange. I don't even know. I'm not sure what to make of it. Although, I know this.
Pence favorable rating shot up 7 points. Who cares?
Yeah.
Mike Pence, after Trump loses, going back to that discussion about reconciliation, is going to be irreparably tarred with Donald Trump's nonsense. There is no possible way Donald Trump's running mate is going to be able to run away from Donald Trump. This is just such a basic concept. I don't even know why it's up for discussion. The idea that Pence is going to do well, who says so? Republicans. Republicans think he's great. Republicans think that if Pence was running, he would beat Hillary Clinton.
Sure, of course.
This is it's another separate piece in Politico, and a great example of why you should never pay attention to political insiders.
No, political insiders have the shortest memories sometimes.
It's about 35 minutes.
I can't believe how often they fall for the how often they convince themselves that there's permanence to the very obvious and very well-known repeating pattern of Republicans pushing potential candidates to the lead because 10 minutes ago they said something nasty about Clinton and everybody hates Clinton. I mean, that was the story
that's the
of...
thing. They're so driven by Clinton hatred that they don't have any judgment. And that gets back to that whole thing about what Max Boot was saying about relying too much on your own media.
Yeah.
The country does not hate Hillary Clinton. They're about to elect her.
Yeah.
They thought the same thing about Bill Clinton after he cleaned their clock in his reelection. They just don't get it because they don't want to get it.
But even in the last 2, 3, 4 Republican primaries have been characterized, I think, chiefly by there being a new candidate at the lead every 15 minutes. Herman Cain and Ben Carson, and now it's Carly Fiorina, and whoever says the meanest thing at the moment. Right, and then Rick Santorum believed it. He came back to run again in 2016, and he's like, I was the runner-up. He was the last man standing before Mitt Romney. That means Republicans love me. No, it means Republicans are completely bonkers in the way they pick their candidates, and they change their minds every 15 minutes. Depends on who most recently said something nasty about whoever I hate the most, or which one was worse. Well, I called Obama a poop head. Oh, well, geez, you should be
Mike Pence
winning the poll. Oh, I called him
is an extremist who has done so badly that there was no way he was going to survive in Indiana in terms of political career. And suddenly...
But now he's going to be, fantastic. I mean, they rehabilitated Newt Gingrich in the hopes that they had found another candidate, another diamond in the rough. Look, he said something terrible about Obama. He should be in the front.
It's pretty insane. And now the same thing about Clinton. So, this Obama derangement, Clinton derangement syndrome is real. And we're seeing it play on real life. With that, I will have to leave.
Is derangement.
But, thanks so much for... having me on, letting me rant. I feel so much better.
Okay.
Hopes for Florida. Hope the hurricane stays out to sea. Take care. Thanks so much for listening, whether it's Download Podcast. Our friend Armando was down there.
Yeah.
And he tweeted last night his parents are okay. He stayed in the Miami area because they refused to leave.
Yes.
And he just wanted to make sure they were okay. It turns out they were because, among other things, the hurricane really didn't hit Miami. Thank goodness. That would have been an absolute disaster. But I was laughing with Armando last night online because I asked him if his parents were okay. He said, yeah, they're fine. And I said, I wonder how you got to be so stubborn. Where did that come from?
Right. I don't know. Well, you know why they stayed was they averaged all previous hurricane paths and decided... But they intentionally left some out of the calculations and decided that Miami wouldn't have been hit. So they sort of, so they probably argued about the arbitrariness of the data that they were using last night.
I'm sure that's what happened. Anyway, take care, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Greg. Have a great weekend.
And hope everybody in Florida stays safe.
Yeah.
And if you're told to evacuate, get out of there. Don't listen to Drudge.
It's a vacation. Go for it.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Thank you. You do the same. And what other fantastic things do we need to catch up with? Here's something. Here's a couple of things. We'll run through a few items. Last night I saw something which was terrible. Can you believe it? And this morning I found out that it wasn't very new, which was surprising. But I saw... just a video clip from Right Wing Talk. That is on Twitter, the account RWT, Right Wing Talk, RWT Quotes. And it was a clip of the execrable Katrina Pearson, who really should be right next to Melanie Austin in line for involuntary commitment to a mental institution and treatment with I don't know what kind of psychoactive drugs. I'm guessing. A doctor might agree. But another one of her ridiculous clips from television saying what I think is, and I tweeted it out last night, I think it is the most nakedly bigoted and ignorant thing I have seen from this campaign or any other to date. And then it turns out, somebody says, there's actually an old clip. It's from a year ago, pretty much. And I don't know why it was being recirculated yesterday, but it was. And it comes down to this. It is Katrina Pearson and S.E. Cupp. And I do not know what the context was. It looks to be on CNN. I assume there were more people on the panel than just the two of them, but that might be par for the course for CNN. We're going to discuss Republican immigration policy. Here are two Republicans to discuss it. There are no Democrats. I don't know whether there were any. It didn't need to be any. S.E. Cupp has been one of them. Has been notable as one of the more outspoken mainline conservatives in condemning the worst excesses of the Donald Trump campaign, and that's good. But I don't love listening to her very much. Katrina Pearson is just a nutball supreme, and I have no idea why she would still be on television. And I guess this explains it. If the clip is a year old, I guess it explains why it. It doesn't explain why I'm only just seeing it now, but it explains why she's still with, or why this isn't being discussed today in the context of you guys need to fire Katrina Pearson today. They decided a year ago it was okay with them. So in a discussion of immigration policy and security policies and the Muslim ban that Donald Trump still hasn't really clarified exactly what he's thinking on that one, but of course all his supporters are insistent that he will ban all Muslims, and they like that. There's an exchange between S.E. Cupp and Katrina Pearson in which is caught in this clip, and S.E. Cupp, it's hard, I could play it for you, but there's a lot of crosstalk, so it's not entirely, it's not all that easy to understand it. Unless you can, also read lips along, see who's doing the talking. It's difficult to run as just an audio track and figure out what's up. But S.E. Cupp is basically saying, your boss has this dumb idea for a Muslim ban, which is ridiculous because we're talking about, in most cases, Syrian refugees, etc. Not only Syrian refugees, but they should be getting to have a normal discussion going on about the policy. And Katrina Pearson basically, goes over the top and then says, well, the problem is we have insurgents, as she puts it, which is, sort of, we've all been tuned into the use of the word insurgents as shorthand for people fighting on the wrong side of any one of the 12.5 regional conflicts in the Middle East in which we have an interest. The bad guys are the insurgents. The good guys are, who knows what, the moderate militias sometimes. Every once in a while we got to come up with a good guy there. So she says, well, insurgents from these areas are pouring across the border and we have to stop them because they're going to come here and kill Americans. And S.E. Cupp says, no, it's ridiculous. Why would you even say such a thing? That's the worst. No one's talking about, no one would knowingly let insurgents, whatever that's supposed to mean, into the country. But we're talking about regular, ordinary, run-of-the-mill, everyday, just trying to live their lives Muslims who are getting caught up in this, and they're being labeled by people like you who are disgusting as insurgents or terrorists. And Katrina Pearson's response to that really ought to be hashtag all by itself. She just simply says very nakedly and pointedly, well, so what? They're Muslims. That's the answer. You can't exclude people from this country who are coming here seeking asylum based on the fact that they happen to share a religion with people who are, who really are terrorists. That's totally un-American. It's a total violation of everything we stand for as Americans and everything that the Constitution is supposed to mean. And Katrina Pearson's answer is, so what? They're Muslims. And that really, I mean, that's about as cold and clear as it gets. I stand by the statement. It's the most nakedly bigoted and ignorant thing I have seen from this campaign to date. There's still time, as many observers are pointing out. William McInerney. Would you say McNerney or do you say McInerney? Well, you can tell me later. Anyway, he points out it's to date, but it'll be hard for them. It'll be hard for them, I think, to beat this one. Although he's probably responding to the tweet and not listening to the show. It just happened to have come across Twitter at the right time. But if you are listening, hi. What does it sound like if I play this thing on the air? Let me see if I can get this through. No, okay, I have to click through and play it outside of Twitter, apparently. Let me see. All right. Just curious if this will start.
United States
Here
history have we ever allowed insurgents to come across these borders? And it's worse now today.
No one's talking about allowing insurgents. You're talking about not allowing
is leading it.
Regular Muslims. That's what you're talking about. No one's talking about insurgents. Who wants insurgents
from
to come
Arab
over?
nations. You know what? So what? They're Muslim. The issue here is that you're not trying to.
We live in, Katrina.
No, it is, but it is, Essie.
That was pretty amazing. I don't know if that came across. Or it didn't sound all that loud in my earphones. But if not, you should find it on my Twitter stream. Honestly, you got to see this thing. And Katrina Pearson, so far gone, of course, that I mean the argument is absurd. S.E. Cupp is saying, these are people, regular Muslims coming for all sorts of reasons, but asylum here in the United States. Oh yeah, but they're coming from Arab countries. Yeah, I mean, you say that like you think that's hard proof of something. It's not. They're coming from Arab countries because, well, the reason they're coming from Arab countries is they are escaping the very terrorists and insurgents and ISIS operatives that you're so worried about. And we really have a duty to them to try and keep them safe if we oppose ISIS as we say we do. And her answer is, but they're coming from Arab countries. Yeah, because that's where ISIS is, and that's where you would be escaping ISIS. That's the point from which you would be departing if you were escaping ISIS oppression. Well, who cares? I mean, at the end, right? So what? They're Muslim. And then, of course, the objection. I guess S.E. Cupp is sort of caught by surprise that this lunatic is on the air saying these things. And she's caught by surprise, of course, that she says, so what? And she responds to that. So what? What do you mean, so what? And then she uses kind of a stock line that is now too weak to stand up to the psychosis of Katrina Pearson. But that's not the America we live in. But it is. It is. Is it? It's not. And maybe you need some sort of involuntary treatment to help you come to the realization that it is not. And, of course, her point is, well, it is because I say it is. We live in a country where I will say irrational things and people won't immediately dismiss me. And, in fact, they might even vote for the person who endorses my irrational speech. I really do stand by my assessment here, juxtaposing almost anything Katrina Pearson says on the air, really. But this in particular, with the story of Melanie Austin that got so much attention. I know, and people are really squeamish about putting those two things together. I really haven't found a lot of people agreeing with the comparison. And maybe because it's wrong, but maybe because it's just uncomfortable. Maybe it's because, it's wrong. It's a bad thing to do. And this is what I assume is making people squeamish about it. To say, well, to keep bashing or harping on the story of Melanie Austin. She's just a regular person who's, had some mental health episodes, and we can't stigmatize that too much. Although it's very interesting to me that, the upshot of her mental illness is that she's come to believe the kind of nonsense that Katrina Pearson and Donald Trump spout regularly. But then I guess the same could be said, and maybe we should be focusing our attention on, say, Alex Jones. There's no reason in the world why he should be roaming free either. But he, like everyone else who gets put away for their insanity, that happens to take political form, will assume that they're a political prisoner. Just as we said yesterday, and as the after show was discussing, and in yesterday's program, Don Blankenship thinks he's a political prisoner. They've criminalized my politics. My politics say that global warming is a hoax and that we need to burn as much coal as possible, and that means that worker safety is not actually an important thing to me. P.S. One reason, prosperity gospel. I don't get to keep as much money if I keep workers safe. That's bad. And two, we need to dig up and burn as much coal as possible. I don't know if he's one of those people that believes that, like say oil and coal are building up in the interior of the earth and the earth will explode unless we release the pressure. Probably. But I don't know if I've ever heard him say that. But he thinks he's being put in jail not because he is callous and kills workers intentionally, but because, and by intentionally I mean, you have every reason to believe that the safety precautions you decide to forego will save lives, but you do it anyway because there's more money for you in it if you just don't do anything to help people. But he thinks he's a political prisoner. That's crazy. Melanie Austin thinks she's a political prisoner because she makes violent threats against the President of the United States and his family. But it's proof of the crazy that you not only do you say and do these things, which are crazy, but the fact that you think you're a political prisoner when we say, oh my gosh, that's dangerous, likewise is evidence that you're actually kind of crazy. Well, Katrina Pearson is definitely crazy, and I really believe that but for having found the grift of the Tea Party, which is how she got her start in politics, it's funny. How many profiles of Tea Party activists did we see over the years that appeared to be, certainly appeared to imply that these new Tea Party activists were like local boys and girls who'd made good, who had said, after all, it's an admirable thing to involve yourself in civic life, and elections are civic life, and okay, they have some extremist views, but getting themselves involved and standing up for their political views isn't something ordinarily that we feel comfortable attacking as a concept. But these people are particularly strange in the way they do that, and we may have some difficulties in accepting them in the mainstream for a number of reasons. So we saw a lot of profiles like that, and Katrina Pearson is one of them. I mean, she, prior to her activism in the Tea Party, and I say grift in the Tea Party because, of course, she basically raised a ton of money at the head of one or another of the various Tea Party groups and then just funneled it to herself in salary and used the money to pay for herself to travel around and be on the stage at any Tea Party event of any note. It's very much like Donald Trump, essentially. She used a lot of the money to get to places where she would be seen that would raise her profile as a Tea Party activist. But prior to being a Tea Party activist, I think she was in trouble regularly. Shoplifting. She was in bankruptcy. She wasn't working. She was basically on the same sort of trajectory that, minus a lucky break, could leave you exactly where Melanie Austin is. But even despite the fact that they took different trajectories, they started their travels with more or less the same views on politics and on life in general. One got a hold of some money and eventually became a Tea Party activist and congressional candidate briefly, and then I think she actually supported Ted Cruz early on, and then moved on and became one of Donald Trump's national spokespeople on television, debating S.E. Cup after a fashion, I guess, on all sorts of issues. She found money. She cleaned up good. They put her on TV. You can take the, backwater lunatic out of the backwater, but you can't get the backwater lunacy out of the lunatic. I mean, she just didn't change her views. Melanie Austin didn't hit the lottery, didn't get the lucky break. She almost did. She got the big sexual harassment settlement, and that's not hitting the lottery. That's getting paid back for having real, honest-to-God wrong done to you. I understand how she could fall into mental illness, like actual, committal to a mental institution, having first faced that kind of day-to-day sexual harassment, and then having found justice for it, and then having that torn away from her. I could see where that would, lead to a breakdown. But she never gets the lucky break in any permanent sense that Katrina Pearson does, and she just continues on that downward spiral and ends up involuntarily committed and on anti-anxiety medications. I don't really know what, but for that lucking out with Tea Party grift separates the two of them. I think they start and end in the same place, minus the ability to clean up, get a nice set of clothes, get some makeup, get your hair done, and poof, now you're a TV pundit instead of a wacko from nowhere that ends up on anti-anxiety medication. I don't know. I'm just saying, I think more people need to be open to the comparison. It's pretty plain, especially once you see her on television saying things like, so what? They're Muslim. I'm going to have to work on that one. We'll hashtag that a little bit. Another thing here's the one we can do as a quick hit just before we hear, and I'm not certain, by the way, that we'll be able to hear from Josie Duffy Rice today. It's a hit or miss thing. I checked in with her. We're going to try and make this a regular Friday thing. A little bit of problem with internet at her place, so that's difficult. She was able to email from a coffee shop across the street. But we'll see whether it is back up and running, and if so, then she will join us. If not, well, we'll try it again next week. And if she's unable to join us, I have a Josie Duffy Rice story that belongs on this show, even independent of Josie herself. So we can have a Josie Duffy Rice segment with or without Josie, although it's often best if you have that person available. I'd have to agree with that one. Let's see. Here's a little bit that you might have seen fly across your Twitter screen. I just thought I would note it rather quickly. Tweeted by somebody with whom I am not familiar, but I have become familiar by seeing her face and her tweet show up on my streams so often over the last couple of days. I'm Scary. A-H-M. Like I'm, but A-H-M Scary. I don't know whether that's, she's switched over to one of those Halloween handles that people do. AHM76 is how you will always definitely find her labeled on Twitter. AHM76. This one, I saw the story elsewhere, but then I liked this reaction to the story. I don't know where the clip came from, but somebody originally circulated it with the comment that it's clear that the people at Breitbart.com who wrote this up don't have any clue whatsoever that this little anecdote makes Democrats support Hillary Clinton more. It was clearly written as a method of, with the idea in mind that people would say, oh my God, what a terrible, terrible person. And Republicans might, but Democrats simply don't. And I thought that was the point that was made originally along with the clip. And I'm Scary here, I think, has put it even more bluntly. She says, I wasn't emotionally invested in Hillary until I found out that she did this thing. And let me tell you what the thing is, and then I'll tell you about what her comment on it. It says, Breitbart.com had this bit. Hillary's combative behavior is nothing new. She's been that way all her life. Boo, we hate her. For my book, I don't know who it is who wrote this. Who cares? But I guess that would be who wrote the article. For my 2005 book, The Truth About Hillary, whatever, I interviewed Hillary's grammar school classmate, Jim Yrgoyen. I've no idea how to pronounce this one. Yrigoyen. Yrgoyen? Well, he told me the story of being ordered by Hillary. Hello, Hillary, I order you. She was ordered by Hillary to guard a warren of baby rabbits and not give any of them away to neighborhood boys. When he did, that is, give them away to neighborhood boys, recalled Yrgoyen, Hillary hauled off and punched me in the nose. And that, of course, to Breitbart fans is, what an authoritarian bitch. And to everyone else in the world, oh my God, of course. I mean, she's like, I have to organize someone to watch over these baby rabbits and make sure that they're not stolen away from their mother. And I really mean it. Scary, of course, says it this way. I wasn't emotionally invested in Hillary until I found out she cold-cocked a dude for effing with baby rabbits. And then a follow-up tweet that says, this story is trying to show that she's a psycho bitch, but it actually shows that she's never been afraid to get tough to protect the defenseless. It really is rather amazing. And what a great example of, I guess, the power of spin from both sides. Both sides engage in the kind of, all right. There you have it. I really enjoyed that anecdote, and I enjoyed that take on the anecdote as well. All right, let's see. Other stories that we have. I have a backup of about 50,000 good stories that Kate Sherrill has shared with me via Twitter and elsewhere, some of which I have put aside already in Pocket, some of which are new, and I have not yet done that. Let's see. There was the story of Donald Trump doing a practice town hall last night, and it didn't go very well. Vox.com, I guess, will explain why. I had heard a little bit about his experience there. I guess he just hates debate prep. In fact, he hates for anybody to know that he's prepping for a debate. I really can't understand why that bothers him so much. Matthew Iglesias, who also has a name that is starts with a Y and is otherwise hard to pronounce, except I figured it out by now, had this story. In the first presidential debate, Donald Trump treated us to the spectacle of a man too lazy, undisciplined, and overconfident to bother preparing for an important moment. So ahead of the second debate, Trump's team is trying to get him to take it more seriously. For instance, Thursday night in New Hampshire, they had Trump do an event in the town hall format rather than his usual rallies, and it seems like it was a total disaster. According to news reports, the following things happened. Rather than take questions from undecided voters, Trump had conservative radio host Howie Carr ask the questions on behalf of members of a handpicked crowd of Trump supporters. Of course, that's not really a good practice because, they're going to be mixed. Okay, never mind. What else? Trump observed that Hispanics in Nevada like to be referred to as Latinos, and that's because, of course, it's a slightly different ethnic mix, but okay, never mind. Trump launched into various attacks on Nate Silver, Illinois Republican Senator Mark Kirk, and CNBC's John Harwood. That's always good. By the way, yes, listener Boswood says, I hope Arliss saw the Hillary Bunny story. I'm fairly certain that she's probably got one of those Google alerts for rabbit stories. So I hope so, too. Let's see, what else happened at the fake town hall debate prep? Trump pandered to the New England crowd by telling them he was rooting for the Red Sox in their ongoing playoff matchup against the Cleveland Indians, even though ultimately pandering to Ohio voters is more important, and Trump is supposed to be a Yankees fan. He probably even told them that he liked New England clam chowder better than Manhattan clam chowder, even though he's from New York. But I think that's actually widely true. I don't think even people in Manhattan like Manhattan clam chowder. Anyway, after saying it would take 20 minutes, Trump sat through, that he would take 20 questions. I'm sorry. Trump sat through only 12, making the whole event last just 30 minutes rather than the 90 he's going to need to stay focused on Sunday. Trump disavowed the previous week and a half's worth of complaints about the microphone at the previous debate and now says, accurately, it wasn't that the mic didn't work. Oh, okay. Glad he got around to that one. Trump promised to fire the director of the FBI, who's a Republican and a former George W. Bush administration figure who has long commanded bipartisan respect on Capitol Hill. Trump put a 2-minute countdown clock on the stage to try to keep himself to the time limit that he'll have on Sunday's debate, but he repeatedly blew right through it. Obviously, we won't know what happens until we watch the debate on Sunday, or at least you do. Maybe Trump will do great. Maybe he'll be doing secret prep, and apparently sloppy New Hampshire performance was a part of a disinformation campaign to lower expectations. But at least on the surface, it looks like what we're seeing is that Trump is who we thought he is, a guy with undeniable charisma and television skills who is simply averse to the boring work of preparation and thinking things through. It's a bad quality in a presidential candidate, but a potentially disastrous one in an actual president. It's true. Okay. I saw some excerpts from, I think, from the town hall, also tweeted yesterday from Sopan Deb, who was tweeting those things out. By the way, total garbage. He is barely capable of rising to Palin level when it comes to answering a question. He's rambling. It's all platitudes, and it's all Trump-style platitudes. Believe me, it's it's really terrific. By the way, the blacks in this country, I love the blacks, and they love me. And really, to be honest, we got to do a great job in this country. I'll build a wall. Oh, boy, will I build a wall. But really, the polling... I told you the blacks, they love me, but the polls, they don't have it. They don't have it in there. I don't know why. They're so dishonest, so crooked. Like Hillary. How about those emails? I'll tell you, the wall, I don't know. I'm going to build that wall. I should have built a wall around her server. Oh, the blacks, they love me. That's how he answers every question. He's bananas, and he's a sloppier thinker than Sarah Palin was, and that's amazing. Sarah Palin was word salad, to be sure. She never made a lick of sense. And really, actually, sometimes Sarah Palin was worse because even her syntax didn't make any sense. Live, spoken, written as transcript, you couldn't make out what she was saying. But she stayed on the topic. It was the wrong topic, often the wrong answer. You know, what do you think about the nuclear triad? And then she would talk about triangles, and I love triangles, and they're so needed in this country of ours, this great nation. I love but you would go on about triangles for 5 minutes. Trump, anything that starts with T. So many things I love that start with T, and A. Not to mention, I mean, that's not to slight the A part. I just got to tell you, when I was Miss Universe, she's so disgusting. You know, that's what he would do. It's really amazing. Look, here's one of those things right now, retweeted by Steve Singeiser, who's retweeting Sopan Debs. It was Sopan who was highlighting different parts of the transcript. Peak Trump, Sopan says. Asked about the Yucca Mountain. Did they say Yucca or Yucca? What do they think? We're on pronunciations today. Anyway, read this whole thing. He says, and they ask him, what do you do about this? This is a nuclear waste storage facility, right? Highly controversial. Famous thing. What are you going to do about it? Just like he didn't know about the nuclear triad, has no idea what's in this mountain. So they ask him, can I ask you about some local issues? If I say Yucca Mountain, Yucca, I don't know what they say. You know what we're talking about here in Nevada. They're actually that's a scary thing to do, to test them straight up like that. You know what we're talking about? If I say Yucca Mountain, oh, I do. Well, you're a proponent of more nuclear plants around the country. We have 100 now. None of them are here in Nevada. Why should we have to store the waste 90 miles from here in a city that draws 40 million tourists a year? I presume that's Las Vegas and not Carson City. So Trump says, right. Well, as you know, I'm very friendly with this area. What does that mean? In fact, I have big enterprises here. And remember, that's another reminder that when Trump expresses his love for an area, he does so in terms of the properties he owns there. There's no inherent value in the place. It's that I own property. That's why I love it. I'm very friendly with this area. In fact, I have a big enterprise here. I have big enterprises here. And especially my building and the hotel, Trump International. I will tell you, I'm going to take a look at it because so many people are talking about it. I came into town and everybody is talking about it. So I will take a very strong look at it. And the next time you interview me, we'll talk about it for 5 minutes, okay? Oh my God, did you hear that? Did you effing hear him answer that question? Do you know what Yucca Mountain is? I do. And in this area, Trump hotels, Trump properties. I love them because Trump. I have so many of them. And I got to tell you, I came in here. You know how I know what Yucca Mountain is? Because I come into this area and so many people are talking about it. They're talking about it. I'm telling you. They're constantly talking about it. They come up to me and they say, I want to talk to you about it. And I'm telling you now, I have heard so many people talk about it that I definitely also want to talk about it. And next time we talk about it, I will tell you something. I will look at this very carefully and we will talk about it. The interviewer kind of follows up. All right, got an idea. just brainstorming, you take the nuclear waste, you bury it under the wall, and that way nobody will even come close to it. What do you think? Maybe that's an idea, right? That's your idea. I think you better, and then there's some crosstalk. Yeah, better than barbed wire. But the concern is that if we had it there, that it would hurt the tourism industry, that people would be afraid of it. With your business interests here, do you share that concern? So now he's basically told them what Yucca Mountain is, that they're going to put the nuclear waste there, and it's close to Las Vegas. And the concern is that people won't want to go to Las Vegas because there's nuclear waste 40 miles away, 90 miles away. I don't see that, but okay, people are weird. Trump says, yeah, I've heard that. Well, I do. I mean, I have a very, number one, you have to worry about safety. And it's a little bit close to a very major population base. So I'm going to take a very strong look at it. And I will come back very strongly. One way or the other, I will have an opinion. That's his actual answer about, I have a question. Do you think it's okay? I really don't. But a lot of people here are scared of it. But they're thinking about storing the entire country's nuclear power plant waste right here. They're going to hollow out a mountain, and they're going to put nuclear waste 90 miles from Las Vegas, which that's not really all that close. I don't know. They could put it in Cuba, and it would be 90 miles from Miami, as they constantly remind us, but I don't know. Anyway, 90 miles out into the desert. I think that's actually pretty reasonable, although nobody wants nuclear waste buried anywhere in their state. I can understand that and appreciate that. But okay, so they're right about that. They don't want it, and they keep saying, we don't want it, so will you please tell us that you also don't want it? And he says, not only will he not commit to that, but how about that? Amazing answer. What's your opinion on this thing? Nuclear friggin' waste buried in my backyard. What's your opinion on that? Well, I'll tell you, I will look at it and I will come back and be very, very strong on it. One way or the other, I will have an opinion, and it will be a strong one. Yay, strong. That's the wave the flags. He said he would be strong later, and we need strength. Yeah, but is he going to put the nuclear waste here? He might come back and say, I very, very strongly endorse putting the nuclear waste here. He might, but whatever. I mean, that was really just an amazing series of statements. That was the most amazing, the culmination of some amazing things. But boy, the things that he was tweeting yesterday and the pieces of that transcript, I recommend, therefore, that you comb through the Sopan Deb tweet timeline and take a look at them, particularly the little clips that have the yellow highlighting, which I think he did on the fly last night. It's amazing that the guy thinks he's qualified to do anything. I mean, you can't, certainly not president of the United States, but I guess you can't kick him out of heading up a privately owned corporation. Okay, so he's found the perfect job for himself there. If Trump organization was somehow to go public, they would be kicking him right the hell out, no doubt about it. All right, well, Josie tells me no internet for this week, so sorry for this. Come back next week. I'll tell you that will be okay, Josie, and I'll answer you in email as well. But we'll find a day to make up for it. I told you I had a Josie story tucked away in pocket here, and I'm not even lying. I'm waiting to scroll and find this thing. And I will tell you a gun fail story that I knew about, but of course I'm so far behind in publishing gun fail that I didn't get around to publishing it myself. But thankfully, there's a lot of great writers, of course, at the Daily Kos who pick up on gun fail stories, maybe, possibly, because they see me tweeting about it, especially more outrageous ones like this one. But Josie had independent reason to pick up on this one. But very often they write them up as freestanding stories before I get around to them as gun fails. But I usually tweet about them pretty often. This one I didn't catch the nuance of. I saw the story. I knew that this person had been accidentally shot and killed, but I didn't know the deeper story as to why. Originally, I picked it up as a Guns Everywhere, Georgia couple, a successful, a little bit older, successful professional white couple from they keep an apartment in a fashionable area of Atlanta where I guess they have to work during the week, but they have a ranch out in the country where they spend their weekends. You know, it's a very well-to-do couple. And the wife was accidentally shot to death by the husband. And so I knew that was the case, but check this. It's unbelievable what ended up coming out of this one. Josie wrote it. It's going to spill the beans. Right in the headline, because that's what headlines do. Man shoots and kills wife, comma, important to punctuate after that, blames his fear of Black Lives Matter. You know, yesterday I told you the story of a person who fired a gun, thankfully didn't hit any people, but I don't know where that round went. I'm still waiting to find out if there's ever going to be a story about a bullet coming through somebody's front door because of the guy who shot at his neighbor walking her dog because he thought she was actually one of these clowns that everybody's panicking about all over the country. As though that was a good reason to run inside, get an AR-15 and fire. It is not. We covered that extensively yesterday. So how about this? So people are firing their weapons more or less indiscriminately because they're afraid of the killer clown epidemic. And now we have, or before that, we have this guy who shoots and kills his wife because he's afraid of Black Lives Matter. How did that come together? Well, here's Josie's retelling of it. A prominent Atlanta attorney shot and killed his wife on Monday, last Monday, not this immediate previous, but the last week's Monday, blaming his fear of Black Lives Matter and threatening people. Tex McIver, that's his nickname, Tex. I think his name is, I forget what his actual name is, but anyway, Tex McIver, I'm sure it's in these stories, and we'll read some of the first-hand reports too. Tex McIver, senior partner at Fisher & Phillips, was in the back seat of a Ford Expedition when he shot Diane McIver in the back. Diane was sitting in the passenger seat when a hired chauffeur drove the couple from their country home to their main residence in Buckhead, an upper-class and largely white neighborhood in Atlanta. So they're doing well. A nice apartment in Atlanta and their country home that they stay at the weekends, and a chauffeur drives them in a Ford Expedition back and forth between the two. I mean, I guess that's nice and everything. And I suppose if you got disposable income, you can do whatever you want with it. And to me, I sort of think of like one of the reasons I can't envision myself, even if I had that much money, having a country place and a city place is the drive in between is kind of a drag. But not if you get a chauffeur. That's really, well, they were living in a lap of luxury, briefly. She's dead now, so she's not in the lap of luxury anymore. He is, she's not. Anyway, according to McIver's spokesperson, and by the way, let me point that out again. McIver, you don't think my eyebrows went up? Like, made me think, of course, immediately of Meredith McIver, with whom they have almost certainly no relationship whatsoever. But I'll tell you what else happened. I found out recently, I saw another report on this in which Mr. McIver's attorney is quoted, and his attorney's last name is Maples. So I just thought I'm like, oh my God, it's a story about Meredith McIver. And when I saw it on Google, and you just have a little excerpt and just had the last names mentioned. Oh my God, a shooting involving McIver and Maples. What is, oh yeah, that's right. Tex McIver. All right. Well, not as exciting as I thought it could have been. McIver, though, this point has a spokesperson by the name of Bill Crane. I don't know how private individuals have spokespeople. I'm not really sure, but it happens all the time. A spokesperson for the family refused to talk to the press about it. It's, a cousin, whatever. Anyway, Bill Crane says to the Daily Report, the car they were in encountered traffic on their way home and decided to cut through downtown. It's the chauffeur's fault. So, this from the Daily Report. McIver was aware that there had been Black Lives Matter protests at Lenox Square and downtown over the weekend, Crane said, and he was worried about unrest. So that's your starting point. Tex McIver, on his way back from his ranch, his weekend home in the country, to Buckhead, unfortunately finds himself, because traffic, and you can't have traffic in a life like this. Are you kidding me? So they cut through downtown, and then he realized, oh my God, the other day there was a protest here, and the protest had black people at it. I better get my gun. The driver took a wrong turn off Edgewood Avenue and drove down unfamiliar downtown streets. Bonfire of the Vanities happening here. Unfamiliar streets, which intensified McIver's concerns, Crane said. McIver spotted people whom he perceived as threatening. And again, this is the worst possible thing. It just the whole stand your ground movement has got people sure that anytime they feel uncomfortable, a gun is an appropriate thing to draw. So it intensifies McIver's concerns. McIver spotted people whom he perceived as threatening, Crane said, and fearing a carjacking, he asked his wife for a gun that he kept in the console between the driver's seat and the front passenger seat of the vehicle. By the way, how does the chauffeur get back and forth to this job? I'm just curious. This is their car. They have it with them at their country home. They're taking it back to Buckhead. And the chauffeur, because it's his car, he's got the gun in the console. They just hire somebody to do the driving back and forth. I don't know. Anyway, give me the gun that I keep in the console between the driver's seat and the front passenger seat of the vehicle, honey. He says he took the gun, which was inexplicably wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, because that's exactly what well-to-do gun enthusiasts like to do with their guns. Should I have a holster? Should I have a case for it? Nah, plastic grocery bag. That's very street. I want to be authentic. And so there you have it. He took it out. It's wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. He put it on his lap. It's not clear here whether he takes it out of the bag or not. I don't know. Somehow, despite all his overwhelming fear, as Josie is writing again here, he then fell asleep again. Now they're driving down Piedmont Avenue in Midtown when, he says, they hit a bump. Oh no. Which caused the gun in his lap to discharge. The bullet struck his wife in the back. Nothing, and I mean nothing, about this story makes sense. As an Atlanta native, and again, this is Josie writing here, not me, I'm not an Atlanta native, I can tell you there are some gaping holes in this recall. The incident occurred around 12:30 a.m. Monday, so it seems unlikely that McIver so feared unrest from protests that happened Friday and Saturday. What's more, according to all the local reports, those protests were peaceful and organized, and there was no indication of any unrest or violence. That doesn't help Tex McIver, because, of course, he heard there were Black Lives Matter protests. And sure, the TV says they're peaceful and organized and that there was no indication of any unrest or violence, but Negroes, you know what that means. Imagine, in his mind, it doesn't really matter. The TV says that, but that's because they're all in the tank for Obama. These people are idiots. The protests were also happening at Lenox Square, which is located in McIver's Buckhead neighborhood. That's problematic. I think you got him there, Josie. But even if his fears were real, she writes, that doesn't make them any less racist. No, not at all. His carjacking fear was completely unfounded. Notice that there did not seem to be any interaction between the vehicle and people that McIver, quote, perceived as threatening. They don't stop the car. They don't look at the car. They don't pound on the car. They don't ask the car to slow down as they cross the street. Nothing like that is reported. They were just on the street and black at the time, and that a black person on the street where a white person is driving a car, there's only one reason that black person could be there, and it's clearly to carjack me. It couldn't be to go home, to go to church, to come back from the store, to simply walk down the street, to be, they're walking on their way to the local campaign, or the local voter registrar's office to change their registration to Republican so they can support Donald Trump, because they believe that the real problem in America today is lazy black people who they live around all the time, and they're fed up with it. But maybe I'll carjack a white guy on the way, because why walk? Because it's tough to do. And I'm lazy, I should be driving a car, and possibly this one right here. to the registrar's office to re-register to vote for Trump. I don't know what happens in a stupid head like this, but probably nothing. Notice again, as she writes, there doesn't seem to be any interaction between the people that he thinks are threatening and the car itself. Edgewood is a trendy, popular neighborhood in Atlanta. It's gentrifying rapidly, but the neighborhood is still primarily black. The phrase perceived as threatening is a dog whistle if I've ever heard one. It's also legal cover, of course, under the stand your ground doctrine, but those are not separate things. The reason it's legal doctrine, the reason it's the preferred phrasing here is because I think the law's designers knew very well what kind of language white racists would need to use to cover up their killing of minorities. I perceive them as threatening. Why? Because I perceive all minorities as threatening. You don't have to explain why you perceive them as threatening. You just have to say so. And if you're lucky enough to draw a jury that also perceives all black people and all minorities as threatening, it'll work. They'll skip the logical step of why did you perceive them as threatening, and they'll go right to, oh, black. That's why you perceived them as threatening. I get it. Okay. So it's both dog whistle and legal doctrine rolled into one, which of course is prima facie evidence of institutional racism, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, we'll move on with this one. It's hard to believe that MacIver felt so nervous that he had to pull out his gun, and it's remarkable that a man could shoot his wife in the back and still manage to blame his actions on a fear of black people. Even without his bizarre Black Lives Matter / black people excuse, there's still more about this story that doesn't make any sense. By the way, I was just thinking about the guns and all sorts of other weird things that have happened with it and other weird excuses people have made with it. I think I was reminded by a tweet the other day that it was very recently the anniversary or something of a shooting. I can't even remember like where it happened, but do you remember? Maybe it was my research into something else, looking things up. But do you remember the story about the guy who shot a gay man who admitted on one of the talk shows on the daytime TV sensationalist talk shows that he had a crush on this other guy, and then he shot and killed him after the show, and he was trying to muster up what he was calling like a gay panic defense. I'm anti-gay, and so finding out that a gay person was interested in me caused gay panic, and that's why I shot them, and that should be okay. Do you remember that was a thing? I'm sort of wondering. I'm sort of relating it to this, right? This is just like black panic. Black people panic me. Is that reasonable? Is that logical? That, by the way, at common law, that would be the normal inquiry into what happened here. Well, you say you perceived them as threatening, and the jury needs to decide, is that a reasonable thing to think? Now, with a good white jury, you can usually get those people to think that it is reasonable to be afraid of black people all the time. But add the stand your ground type defense, and all you need to do is say you felt threatened, and the jury doesn't have to decide whether or not that was really reasonable for you to feel threatened. The design, the ultimate aim of stand your ground is you don't even get to the trial stage because the judge says, I can't bind you over for trial. You felt threatened. Stand your ground doctrine says you get to walk. So long as you put your hand on that Bible and raise your hand, that's an automatic truth-making machine, as you know, because Bible, and you said you felt threatened. There's nothing I can do now. You felt threatened. It used to be that we would say, is it reasonable for you to feel threatened? And I guess white people eventually found out that there might be black people on a jury, and they might not agree that it's reasonable to feel threatened when you see a black person. So we'll just write it into law that you don't have to get to that stage. That's what's going on here behind the scenes and all this. So there you go. He pulls out a gun because he has every right to, Remember, that's another thing. Used to have to say, is it reasonable for you to have that gun out? Why? Doesn't matter. Second Amendment says I can have it wherever I want. If I want to put it on my lap while we're driving, then I can. Okay, but I guess now we have to live with that. So there he goes. He pulls out the gun, and then he's so scared and so nervous that he's put the gun on his lap, and then, I guess, so exhausted from the burst of nervous energy that he falls asleep because of all the threats around him. I need to be alert and aware and protect myself. Give me that gun so that I can be ready on a moment's notice to stop any sort of a... What's not listed here is he's got narcolepsy, and I really shouldn't be making fun of that. That's awful. But I don't know why they didn't mention it. That would have been so helpful in his defense. But it's left out of here. Even without his bizarre Black Lives Matter / black people excuse, there's still more that doesn't make sense. MacIver falls asleep in the back seat. But if he was worried enough to pull out his gun, wouldn't he be worried enough to at least stay awake? Stay woke, Tex. You're in danger. And why was the gun pointed directly at his wife's back? Was there no lock on the gun or safety precaution of any kind? How did they encounter a road bump serious enough to cause a gun to discharge on one of Atlanta's most popular roads, a road which has no speed bumps? So, hey, it could be a pothole. Who knows? And of course, it could happen, but what's interesting is we hit a bump so hard that it caused the gun to discharge. Well, what's really happening here? I think we all know this by now. It might be a bump. It might have been a bump that caused this chain of events to take place. But what you would really have to be talking about here, what's unstated here, is you would have to be holding the gun pointed, well, probably not intentionally pointed at your wife's back, if we believe that this isn't just a straight up murder. Pointed at your wife's back, but mostly because it's on your lap and you're in the back seat and she's in the front seat, and you're not pointing it at your wife's back so much as you are pointing it forward and forgetting that your wife is in the front seat, or that there's a driver in the front seat. And you've got your finger on the trigger where it's not supposed to be. Because, of course, everybody follows all the rules, blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about it. Responsible gun owners will never cause any kind of a problem. Don't you know there's rules? And you libtards never cease to amaze me at how frightened and skittish you are around an inanimate object. You're not supposed to have your finger on the trigger. He had his finger on the trigger because he was so worried about carjacking that he fell asleep with his finger on the trigger. Now, if you hit a bump with your finger on the trigger, I could see, getting startled by the bump and jumping and, especially if you're already nervous or you were asleep and now you're startled awake and squeezing almost involuntarily. That's how you can accidentally shoot and kill your wife. But none of that is included in the article either. I don't know why. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Josie concludes, reported that the driver took the injured woman to a hospital on Clifton Road, 4.5 miles away. By the way, Piedmont Hospital is less than half that distance from the shooting scene. Maybe you would have to make a U-turn and go back through the dangerous area. I don't know. Why wouldn't MacIver take his wife somewhere closer? At that point, she's still alive. She died later that morning during surgery. MacIver isn't the only one acting suspiciously. Police behavior in this case has been quite peculiar. Also from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, there's this. The Atlanta Police Department has said almost nothing about the case, which involves two prominent residents that declined to elaborate on Friday. The Atlanta Police Department released an incident report of the shooting on Wednesday, more than 2 days after officers responded to a call of a gunshot victim at the University Hospital. The police report did not list who was in the SUV other than Diane MacIver. An officer talked to the driver but didn't include in the report what the driver said. It's a major omission. It's not even clear that police even interviewed MacIver at all. From the Daily Report, an Atlanta police officer who'd arrived on the scene at the hospital allowed MacIver to go home Sunday night on his own recognizance after he was told his wife had died, Crane said. The police officer interviewed the driver and impounded MacIver's car, a white Ford Explorer, Crane said. Why wouldn't cops interview Mr. MacIver as well? It's worth pointing out that MacIver is a big deal in the legal and business community in Atlanta, And for 40 years, he's worked as a labor and employment lawyer, working solely for the employers, by the way. MacIver's history of defending corporations is long documented. His law firm's website says he has successfully defended employers in more than 200 union organizing campaigns. Nice guy. In 2013, he personally represented Republican Governor Nathan Deal when he refused to comply with the Georgia Open Records Act request for information on a state program's hiring practices. For now, MacIver is sticking to his "I shot my wife because I was so scared of black people" story, but clearly there's a lot that still needs clarification. Either way, MacIver's wife is dead because of his irrational fear of black people. Meanwhile, it looks like he's already back to work, because the Atlanta Journal-Constitution says, reached briefly on his cell phone Wednesday morning, MacIver's husband, Tex, described his state as, quote, "the worst I have ever felt," unquote, before saying he had to attend a meeting that would last into the afternoon. So goodbye. There you go. She's got an update at the bottom, by the way. The police department has confirmed via police report that the circumstances of this shooting are still under investigation. So at least there's that. Wow. Another amazing gun fail story. Couple that one with the one from yesterday about fear of clowns. Guys, you can't keep doing this. It's getting too crazy. Have the guns if you want them, although there would be fewer accidents if you didn't. Just take your own advice. Follow the safety rules. The problem is you keep harping on the safety rules, but you never follow them. Couldn't you please? All right, let's see if we can squeeze this one in here just before we wrap things up. I've got another contributor here, another new contributor from down in Texas. We'll identify him merely as John R., but I will show you a link to his Daily Kos profile as well, where his handle is considerably more complicated. But he's got a piece I thought I would toss in the last minute or so about desegregation in Texas. John R., take it away.
Good morning, David. This article is from the Texas Observer. The article was published on September 30th, 2016, by Patrick Miches and Gus Bova. Fighting decades-old desegregation orders. Critics say the orders aren't necessarily irrelevant just because they're old. In late August, a federal judge released Tyler ISD from a desegregation order that had been in place for almost half a century. The district was one of the last in Texas still subject to such an order, and district leaders argued it had become little more than bothersome red tape. Across the nation, court orders in the 1960s and 70s consolidated school districts, redrew school zoning, and prompted busing programs to make schools more racially balanced. In 1970, East Texas Judge William Wayne Justice placed the entire state of Texas under a desegregation order. In 2010, a judge released all but a few districts from the case as a matter of legal formality without reviewing enrollment or funding statistics. One by one, the last Texas districts remaining under desegregation orders are working to get free. Often that effort is led by a superintendent or school board official who remembers a dramatic period of school integration decades ago and sees the court order as a relic of a bygone time. But desegregation orders cover more than overt discrimination, said Wake Forest University professor Wendy Parker, who has studied the order's legacy. They're also meant to ensure that districts equitably distribute money, recruit more teachers of color, and educate white students as well as they educate non-white students, she told The Observer. Those are issues that schools continue to struggle with, or in some cases stop struggling with once they're removed from a court order. According to research by the UCLA Civil Rights Project, schools in the South have quietly resegregated in the last 20 years as they've been released from court orders. There's no reason, Parker said, to assume that the orders are irrelevant just because they're old. Even though your white schools are more diverse than they were in 1954, Parker said, the duty to provide an equitable education continues until 2016. An observer review of court documents and state records, as well as conversations with district officials, suggests that 6 to 12 districts are still under desegregation orders. It's extremely difficult to track, though. Orders referenced in decades-old federal documents don't always turn up in a search of court records. Some school officials told The Observer they had no idea such an order was in place in their district. Don't know anything about it. First time anyone's ever asked me about that, Trinidad ISD Superintendent Corey Jenkins said when asked about an order that is referenced in a 1978 federal report and, according to a 2014 ProPublica investigation, remains open. Asked about the open desegregation order in Fairfield ISD, Assistant Superintendent Melissa Cox asked, "Is there something we should be doing about this?" In the decades since the movement for school integration, schools have quietly resegregated along neighborhood lines. Where those old desegregation orders are still in place, Parker said, they remain one of the only ways to force a conversation about a difficult subject. It's not that a federal court intervention is a magic wand that created equality, but it does force a democratically elected school board to think about these issues, Parker said. I think that the court order forces people to talk about things that they might not otherwise want to talk about.
That is likely true. Okay, we got a bit of a cold ending on that one there. Thanks, John, for sending us that one. Interesting turn of events down there. I wouldn't that had not occurred to me that we hear a lot about some backsliding, I guess you could call it, in desegregation orders in southern schools, and not a lot of discussion of the fact that a lot of these court orders are still on the books, as you might say. They're not actually on the books. They haven't been codified. But what an interesting story that they've just sort of aged to the point where local school officials feel like they can either get away with ignoring them because people haven't talked about them in a long time, or in some cases, the school officials are entirely ignorant of the fact that they exist at all, which is problematic in itself. You would think that that would be a constant topic of discussion, just reminding each school board as new members join. By the way, we're under federal court order to continue to work towards maintaining a desegregated public school environment. But it's been years since those orders were entered, and nobody has ever thought about it. Amazing, just the number of things you got to juggle at any given time, which I think makes it awfully important to just sort of do the record scratch stop and throw this story into the mix. I don't regret it in the least. And thank you, John. I see you've got a stack of stories from Texas that we have available to us in the coming days. And then, of course, next week we can try once again to catch up with Rosalind McGregor and her preview of the Michigan 2018 gubernatorial race. Rosalind, you should never have told me that that was a long-term story. Should have said, got to play it this week. All right. Well, that gives us we're out of time, really. It gives us a signal here, the music does, to turn things over to the guys on the after show and try and cram in as much about what's coming up on their show as possible. Starting right now. Ready? Teachers, students, and parents in over 200 cities protest the lack of funding for public education. In an approach described as surgical, Ammon Bundy's cross-examination took a mere 15 minutes. And Philippines President Duarte dares the United States and the European Union to withdraw aid after telling President Obama to go to hell. He's a nice guy over there. Real diplomat. For the last half, it's the Friday News Dump and Recycling Center. They like to say news that's been repurposed with a purpose. What's up? An Oregon church rules overweight people should not be worship leaders. And an Iranian woman receives a 6-year jail term for writing a fictional, unpublished short story about stoning.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Now, how's that for an eclectic mix of stories? Not only end of our show, but the entirety of the after show. And if that's not enough, well, there's also the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Kos Community Calendar and more, whatever comes up and might occur to them along the way when Wink and Justice host the after show on Netroots Radio next. I'll see you next week.